Maya had been on her feet for 9 hours when the man in the tailored charcoal coat decided her coffee was unacceptable. She blinked once. "I just made it fresh." I said, "It's cold." His eyes lifted, then dark. Not soft dark, the kind of dark that suggested decisions were made quickly and rarely reversed. The eyes of someone who had spent years learning how to end conversations before the other person realized they had begun. The cafe went quiet, not obviously, not all at once, but the air shifted. Forks slowed, a chair leg scraped and then stilled. Even the ancient refrigerator behind the counter seemed to hum louder, like it was aware of the pressure change. Maya reached for the mug. The ceramic burned against her palm, genuinely hot. "Sir, the coffee is. Are you arguing with me?" He had not raised his voice. He didn't need to. It carried weight the way a storm carries weight before it breaks. Heavy, patient. Inevitable point, one of the men at the counter turned slightly on his stool, watching. Maya felt the exhaustion in her bones, the ache in her arches, the tightness behind her eyes that had nothing to do with sleep and everything to do with being talked over one too many times. She leaned forward, just 6 inches, closed the professional distance, met his eyes directly. "Shout at me again," she said very quietly, "and I will end you." The cafe stopped. "Before we continue, I write these stories for the ones who feel too deeply unseen. If that's you, please don't leave without subscribing." Chapter 1. What Cannot Be Contained. Fire does not announce itself with courtesy. It arrives without asking permission, without negotiation, without the polite preamble of smoke. One moment there is structure. The next, there is only heat and the terrible understanding that what was solid has become air. On the eastern edge of Greystone City, where the river bent toward the industrial quarter and the streetlights flickered with the rhythm of a failing heart, there was a place called the Meridian Cafe. It smelled like burnt coffee and decades of grease that no amount of scrubbing could ever fully erase. The booths were cracked vinyl. The floor tiles were yellowed in a pattern that suggested someone had once cared about aesthetics and then surrendered to entropy sometime in 1987. The regulars were elderly couples who came for the early bird special and argued gently about blood pressure medication. The irregular customers were usually lost, using the bathroom, or both. Maya Cross had worked there for 3 years, 2 months and 17 days. She knew this because she had been counting down to a specific number. The number was not arbitrary. It was the exact amount of time she needed to save $8,400, enough for first month's rent, last month's rent, security deposit, and a modest buffer for the move to Riverside, where her former college roommate Joanna had a lead on an administrative position at a dental practice that paid $18 an hour and didn't require her to smile through harassment. Maya was 28 years old, 5'3". Dark hair she kept in a tight bun because loose hair felt like a vulnerability she couldn't afford. She had a degree in sociology from Greystone Community College that she kept in a plastic sleeve under her bed because she couldn't afford a frame and refused to let it get damaged. Her father, Vincent Cross, had been gone for 4 years. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4, diagnosed 6 months too late. The medical debt from his final year of treatment was $34,000. She paid $200 a month toward it, which meant at current interest rates she would be paying until she was 41. Her mother, Elena, lived in the Willowbrook Care Facility 20 minutes away. Early onset dementia. She was 59, and some days she knew Maya's name, and some days she called her by her sister's name, and some days she looked at Maya like a stranger who had wandered into her room without invitation. The care facility cost $4,200 a month. Maya's share, after Medicaid and a sliding scale adjustment she had fought for with the tenacity of someone defending a border, was $950. She did not go to movies. She did not buy new clothes. She cut her own hair in the bathroom mirror every 6 weeks with kitchen scissors and had learned to make it look intentional. But she smiled at customers. She smiled because Martin Reeves, the owner, had a laminated sign behind the counter that said, "Service with warmth. Coldness costs tips." And Maya believed in earning what she was owed. It was a Thursday in late November, 9:47 p.m., when the world shifted on its axis. Maya was on hour 10 of a 12-hour shift. She had covered for Derek Santos, who had called in sick but was actually at his cousin's engagement party in Northbridge. She knew this because Derek was the kind of person who posted photographic evidence of his lies on social media within 2 hours of committing them. She didn't mind covering. She needed the hours. The first car arrived without sound, a black Mercedes sedan with tinted windows, idling at the curb like a predator assessing prey. Then a second. Then a third. Martin Reeves, who was restocking napkin dispensers behind the counter, looked up at the window. His face went pale in a way Maya had only seen once before, when the health inspector had found a rat's nest in the storage room. "Maya," he said quietly. His voice had changed, flattened. "Table 8. Table 8 was the corner booth, the large one with the high-back seats, the one that couldn't be seen from the street. The one Martin kept spotless even when every other surface in the cafe was a disaster. "I have 4 tables right now, Martin. Take table 8. The tone left no room for discussion. Maya grabbed her notepad. The men entered first. 2 of them, both large, both wearing suits that cost more than her rent. They moved with the quiet efficiency of people whose profession involved identifying exits and eliminating threats. They did not look at her. They took positions at the counter, facing outward. Then the door opened again. Victor Kane stepped into the Meridian Cafe like a man who had never once considered the possibility that he might not be welcome. He was 43 years old, broad-shouldered, silver threading through dark hair at the temples. Charcoal suit, no tie, white shirt unbuttoned at the collar. A watch on his left wrist, that Maya would later learn cost more than her father's final year of medical treatment. He did not scan the room. He did not acknowledge anyone. Men like him did not ask for permission. He walked directly to table 8 and sat down. Maya did not know who he was. She knew only that he had entered her section, and that Martin's face had gone the color of old newspaper. She approached with her practiced smile, the one that had carried her through 3 years of entitled customers and inadequate tips. "Welcome to the Meridian. Can I start you with something to drink?" Victor Kane did not look up from his phone. "Coffee. Black. And whatever your special is tonight." His voice was controlled, precise, the voice of someone accustomed to being obeyed immediately. Maya wrote it down. "Special tonight is chicken pot pie. House-made crust." He said nothing. He was already typing something on his phone. She left. When she returned 4 minutes later with the coffee and a bowl of the pot pie, she set them down with practiced care. The coffee was fresh. She had made a new pot specifically for him because the carafe on the burner had been sitting for 23 minutes, and she could tell by looking at him that this was not a man who tolerated mediocrity. He picked up the mug, took 1 sip, set it back down with a sound that was not quite a slam but communicated everything a slam would have. "This is cold." Maya blinked. "I just made it fresh." "I said it's cold." His eyes lifted then. Dark brown, almost black. The eyes of someone who had spent years learning to finish conversations before the other person realized they had begun. The cafe went quiet, not the gradual quiet of people noticing something. The sudden, total quiet of a room that had collectively stopped breathing. Maya reached for the mug. The ceramic was hot against her palm. Genuinely hot. "Sir, the coffee is. Are you arguing with me?" He had not raised his voice. That was the thing. It was perfectly level. But it carried weight the way a storm carries weight before it arrives. One of the men at the counter had turned slightly on his stool. Maya felt something old and tired rise up inside her chest. She thought of her father's medical bills. She thought of her mother in Willowbrook, asking a nurse if her daughter was coming today. She thought of Derek Santos posting photos from an engagement party instead of being here. She thought of the plan that kept slipping further and further out of reach, no matter how many hours she worked. She thought of the $8,400 that would let her start over. And something inside her, exhausted beyond the ability to perform politeness, reached its absolute limit. At 10:11 p.m., in the corner booth of the Meridian Cafe on the eastern edge of Greystone City, Victor Kane raised his voice. Not dramatically, not the way movies show violence, but enough to cut across the quiet room. Enough that the elderly couple at table 3 stopped mid-conversation. Enough that the teenager scrolling through his phone at table 6 looked up, Do you have any idea how long I've been sitting here being served substandard food by someone who apparently can't manage a single cup of coffee without making excuses? Maya leaned forward, just 6 inches, closed the professional distance, met his eyes directly. Shout at me again, she said very quietly, and I will end you. The silence that followed was not social. It was seismic. The cafe stopped. Every conversation, every movement, the hum of the ancient refrigerator behind the counter suddenly seemed deafening. Victor Kane stared at her. In 43 years, in boardrooms and courthouses and private rooms where the city's actual power was negotiated, in meetings with prosecutors and rivals and men who had excellent reasons to be afraid, nobody had spoken to him like that. Not his ex-wife, not his associates, certainly not a waitress earning $11 an hour in a cafe that smelled like burnt grease. One of his men, the taller one, whose name was Marcus Reeve and who had been with Victor for 9 years, stood halfway from his stool. Victor raised one finger without looking away from Maya. Marcus sat back down. Maya's heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Her hands, pressed flat against her notepad, were shaking. She forced them still through sheer will. Victor studied her. Something behind his eyes recalibrated. The way a lens adjusts when it realizes a subject is more complex than the initial assessment suggested. He picked up the coffee mug, took a slow, deliberate sip, set it back down. It's still cold, he said, but the edge was gone. His voice had changed. There was something almost curious in it now. Maya straightened. I'll bring you a new one. She turned and walked back to the counter. Martin was standing at the register, looking like he had aged a decade in the past 3 minutes. Do you know who that is? He whispered. A difficult customer, Maya said. Maya, that is Victor Kane. A pause. Should that mean something to me? Martin stared at her like she had just admitted she didn't know what oxygen was. Child, he said very quietly, go make that man the best cup of coffee you have ever made in your life, and pray he doesn't remember your name. Maya looked at Martin's face, really looked at it, and for the first time, she felt the cold weight of understanding settle over her. She made the coffee. She brought it to table 8, set it down without apology, without groveling. Fresh pot. 3 minutes ago. Victor wrapped his hand around the mug, held her gaze. Sit down, he said. I'm working. I know. Sit down anyway. Maya hesitated. Then she pulled out the opposite chair and sat. This was the first thing Victor Kane had said that she couldn't argue with, not because of who he was, but because her feet were killing her and she had been standing for 10 hours straight. You speak to all your customers that way? He asked. Only the ones who shout at me. I wasn't shouting. You were getting there. Something moved in his face. Not quite a smile. More like the recognition of one. What's your name? Maya. Maya what? Cross. He leaned back slightly. How long have you worked here, Maya Cross? 3 years. And before that? Does it matter? I'm curious. I had a different job. Doing what? Maya met his eyes. Why are you asking? Because, he said slowly, in 15 years, nobody has spoken to me the way you just did. And I'm trying to decide if you're brave, or just unaware of how dangerous that was. Probably both, Maya said. This time he did smile. The real kind. Brief, but genuine. The coffee's fine, he said. It was fine before. Maya stared at him. Then why? I was having a bad night. I took it out on you. That was wrong. It was not an apology exactly. More like a statement of fact. But Maya recognized it for what it was, something he didn't say often. What kind of night? She asked. Victor looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, My daughter called. She's 15. She asked if I was coming to her school concert next week. I told her I'd try. She said, You always say that, and hung up. He paused. She was right. Maya said nothing. You asked, he said. I did. Another silence. This one different from before. How old is your daughter? Maya asked. 15. Her name is Isabel. Go to the concert, Maya said. He looked at her. I know it's not my business, she continued. But go, even if it's uncomfortable. Even if you're only there for an hour. It matters. Victor Kane looked at the woman across from him, this woman with the tight bun and the work apron and the pen tucked behind her ear, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Like someone was actually talking to him. Not to his name. Not to his power. Not to what he could do or destroy. To him. He stood. Thank you for the coffee, Maya. He left a $100 bill on the table for a $12 check. As he walked past her, he said quietly, I'll go to the concert. The door closed behind him. The 3 cars pulled away. Maya sat at table 8 for a long moment, her hands still shaking, her heart still pounding, and the distinct sensation that something fundamental had just shifted beneath her feet. She had no idea how right she was. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 2. The Architecture of Attention. 3 days after the coffee incident, Maya's phone rang at 8:47 a.m. unknown number. She almost didn't answer. She was at Willowbrook, sitting with her mother, who was having what the nurses called a low day, which meant Elena had asked who Maya was 4 times in the past hour. Maya answered on the 4th ring. Miss Cross. A man's voice. Not Victor's. Professional. Careful. The voice of someone who spoke on behalf of someone else. My name is Simon Tate. I'm calling on behalf of Apex Holdings regarding. Maya hung up. The phone rang again immediately. She stared at it, then answered. Please don't hang up, Simon Tate said quickly. Mr. Kane would like to offer you a position. Maya set down the cup of lukewarm tea she'd been trying to get her mother to drink. A position. Administrative coordinator at Apex Holdings. $28 an hour. Full benefits. Health, dental, vision. He asks that you consider it. Maya looked at her mother, who was staring out the window at nothing in particular. Why? He believes you were treated poorly during your interaction and would like to? That's not compensation, Maya said. That's guilt money. A pause on the other end. Tell Mr. Kane I appreciate the call, but I'm not interested. She hung up. She sat there for a moment, aware that her hands were shaking again. Her mother turned from the window. Was that your sister? No, Mama. That was work. Oh. Elena looked at her hands. I forget things now. I know. Do you still visit me? Every week, Mama. That's nice of you. Maya reached for her mother's hand, held it gently. What happened over the next 2 weeks was something Maya had no framework for. It wasn't harassment exactly. It was more like the subtle realignment of gravity around her. A man she didn't recognize started appearing in her section every other night. Always ordered modestly. Always tipped extremely well. Always left without incident. Derek Santos mentioned that someone had called Martin asking about staff schedules. Real polite guy, Derek said. Sounded expensive. Martin said nothing to Maya about it, which meant Martin was frightened, which meant this was real. Then the flowers arrived. Not roses, not the cliché romantic gesture, but a substantial arrangement of white lilies delivered to the Meridian Cafe with a card that said only, the coffee was perfect. BK. Martin signed for them, handed Maya the card without comment. She threw it away. She kept the flowers. On the 14th day, Victor Kane returned. No convoy this time. No security detail. Just him, at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon, wearing jeans and a dark sweater, looking so unexpectedly like an ordinary person that Maya almost didn't recognize him until he was standing at the counter. Table 8, he asked Martin. Martin looked at Maya. Maya shook her head. Victor nodded slowly. Then I'll sit here. He sat at the counter. Ordered the chicken pot pie again. Ate methodically. Left another absurd tip. As he was leaving, he stopped beside where Maya was refilling the coffee station. My daughter's name is Isabel, he said without looking at her. I went to the concert. She played viola. Second movement of the Brahms. She cried a little when she saw me in the audience. He paused, happy crying. I didn't know she could do that. He left. Maya stood at the coffee station holding the carafe, aware that something inside her chest had shifted. She thought about Isabel Kane crying, happy crying, and she couldn't make it not matter. The 3rd time Victor came to the Meridian was a Sunday, late afternoon. He walked in at 4 p.m., ordered coffee, and when Maya brought it to him, he said, I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to answer as if I'm not whoever you now know I am. Maya waited. Would you have dinner with me? She stared at him for a long moment. No. He nodded as if this were the answer he'd expected. Because of who I am. Because I don't know who you are. And what I've learned since that first night scares me. That's reasonable. His gaze lingered on her face. Not crude. Measured. Like someone taking notes. What if I could tell you the truth? He asked. About what scares you. You can't explain it into something I'm comfortable with. Maybe not, he said. But I'd rather you say no knowing the truth than say no assuming the worst. Maya looked at him. Then she sat down across from him. You have until table 4 needs their check. 15 minutes. Go! What followed was the most honest conversation Victor Kane had had in years. He told her about the business, Apex Holdings, import-export logistics, port operations, real estate development, all of it legitimate on paper, most of it legitimate in practice. He told her about the investigations, 2 of them, federal, one focused on Port Authority contracting, the other on construction permits in the industrial quarter. He told her his name appeared in exactly 0 indictments, but that his brother's name appeared in 3. He told her he had tried twice to restructure the operation into something completely clean, and that both times people who didn't want that had made it impossible. I'm not my father, he said, but I haven't escaped him either. He told her about his ex-wife, Miranda, about how she had left him 3 years ago not because she was afraid, but because she was exhausted. She said living with me was like living next to a power station. Everything vibrated. Nothing was calm. He looked at Maya. I didn't argue with her. She was right. Table 4 signaled for their check. Maya stood. I'll think about it. She walked away. Victor watched her go. And for the first time in a very long time, he felt something that wasn't control or strategy or calculation. He felt hope. Maya said yes to dinner 6 days later. She told herself it was curiosity. She told Joanna in Riverside, who said, Please tell me you're not doing what I think you're doing. When Maya confirmed that she was, Joanna said, Text me his full name and where you're going. If I don't hear from you by 11 p.m., I'm calling the police. This was reasonable. Maya did it. The restaurant was called Elevation. 22nd floor. Windows overlooking the river. No prices on the menu, which Maya found both pretentious and terrifying. Victor was already there. He stood when she walked in. She was wearing a navy dress she'd owned for 4 years and worn twice. She'd done her own hair, left it down for the first time in months. He looked at her the way people look at things they find genuinely valuable. You came, he said.